You are now listening to Wrestle Cinema.
Yeah!
A podcast focusing on wrestlers who dive into the acting world.
Soul is ready!
We're talking about wrestling, we're talking about movies, we're talking about shows, anything and everything in the wrestling world. And
Acknowledge me!
And now, with all that, here is your host, Joe Cologne. Welcome to the first episode of the new season of Wrestle Cinema. As always, I'm your host, Joe. Welcome back to the pod. It's been a minute. It's been a few months since we've really done an episode. I think the last time I was here on my microphone talking about Wrestle Cinema, what was it? Was it See No Evil? I think it was See No Evil, where I had Finn on the pod and we reviewed See No Evil for Halloween time. And there was going to be maybe a November episode. There was going to be maybe a Christmas episode. Just for none of that to happen. But hey, we are here. New season of Wrestle Cinema. We're going to call this maybe our first official season, as this is like new when it comes to what I'm going to be doing on the show in terms of segments that we're going to be having. Last year, now we're in 2025, so that's a big deal. I had Wrestle Cinema and I had so much going on, but now it's slowed down for a bit, but we're here. We're going to do what we need to do. Yeah. Whatever that means. So we'll call this season 1. We could call the last bit of episodes, I think the last 8, we could call that maybe season 0. Who knows? We'll get around to it. But, Wrestle Cinema, we are here. We are back. We are a podcast talking about movies that are featuring wrestlers, TV shows that feature wrestlers. That's the main gist of it all. But, we're also a podcast talking about wrestling, talking about movies, entertainment, TV shows, stuff like that. Some new things to the pod. We will have new segments where I talk about, different things revolving the movie wrestling world. I feel like I've been saying this for a long time, but I'm hoping to get some real guests on here that aren't just people I know closely, which nothing wrong with that, but I would like to get more people on here, and I think it would just be good overall. So anyway, happy 2025. In the new year, we'll have some segments, as I just mentioned. We'll be going to a weekly schedule for the most part. I think to really pick this off the ground, I need to commit myself to some weekly episodes, and I already have an idea of what I want to do. I'm going to probably pre-schedule some episodes as well. We're going to go back to a weekly grind, because anyone that followed the last time I was on committed to my podcast journey on the RIP Project Kayfabe, the former Wrestle Cinema. We were weekly then, and I also had a lot more free time here and there, but, as I get busy, of course, things happen, but I would like to stay on a weekly episode kind of deal. As always, you can follow us on social media, at Wrestle Cinema, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, even though I think by this time next week, TikTok might not even be a thing, so we'll see what happens. So you can follow us all on the social medias, YouTube content as well. You could find, so many different things on there as we continue to grow the YouTube channel. We're going to be making dedicated videos revolving wrestling and movies on there. Of course, I do wrestling gaming content when I have the time, so you could find that there too. So on this episode today, we're going to just talk about what I experienced in 2024, which is all the wrestling shows I went to. I went to maybe too many wrestling shows, and I'll give you a breakdown of what my thoughts were on that. We're going to do this day in wrestling history, talk about some of the, biggest things that happened on today, which is Monday, January 13th. We'll talk about the history on this day. There is actually a good amount of stuff to talk about, some that are relevant to what we're doing here today. So we'll do that, and just some wrestling updates and, overall feeling of wrestling in 2025. And then towards the end of the episode, we'll talk about what we're doing for next week's episode. But anyway, as always, follow us on all social media platforms. Hopefully we'll be continuing with weekly content. That's the goal. Let's stick to it. Breaks maybe here and there, but no, the point is to schedule everything ahead of time. So maybe there isn't any big gaps, as you have seen, if anyone has been following enough. I appreciate anyone that does listen, as I am very inconsistent, but hoping to change that. But hey, enough with the jibber jabber. Let's get into wrestling in 2025. So the year is 2025 now. I hope you all enjoyed your 2024 and have a lot more ambition going into the new year, as I am. I'm hoping to hold on to it. I have my goals set for personal, for content, for career, for relationship-wise. So 2025, you got to stay motivated, and there's a lot going on when it comes to pro wrestling. In the last 2 weeks, we're almost halfway done with the month, which is kind of crazy. We saw the birth of AEW, All Elite Wrestling, on Max. It is streaming now on Max, finally. It's about time that they've been able to strike a streaming deal, or at least a deal where they could put some of their video library on there. And just this past week, we had our first episode of Monday Night Raw on Netflix. So a lot has been happening, getting wrestling, on bigger platforms for the longest time now, ever since AEW existed. At first, there were some, events that happened on YouTube and some Fight TV kind of deal. And then eventually when they struck the TV deal with TNT, TBS, with the Turner Network, that was cool. And for years now, especially with the creation of Max, people are saying, okay, how long until we get AEW on some sort of streaming platform? Technically, it was a part of, or it still might be a part of Fight TV, where, if you live internationally, you're able to watch the show live there. And, you had all the shows, all the episodes of AEW Dynamite, Collision, Rampage, RIP. So it was all there, but now, you could find it on Max. Just like any other streaming platform, when things get added, it's never added all the way that you would like to. So on Max, formerly known as HBO Max, we have, 2019 AEW from the, Dynamites and the Collision. No, there is no Collisions in 2019. From the Dynamites and the pay-per-views. But we don't have everything. We're still missing, from 2020 to, most of 2024. They only got about half of 2024 on there. But to, not to focus on what they don't have, because they're doing a slow rollout. What they do have is some really good quality streaming. A lot of people were concerned of like, all right, we're going to live stream on here. How is it going to hold up? No, it held out perfectly. It was fine, which makes sense because a lot of people I know were like, oh, no, the stream might be pretty shitty for Max. Who knows as they're doing this? AEW's doing this for the first time. But this isn't Max's first time streaming. Max has been doing streaming now for the last year. They have the NBA on there. They have some other stuff, I think, that they live stream. So, honestly, 10 out of 10 with the streaming. I think the only thing that they need to improve on is having the episodes directly available once it's done. I need to double check if it improved, but after the first week, yeah, they did have AEW Dynamite able for replay, but it was Spanish only for some reason, Spanish audio. I don't need to hear Alex Abrahantes or anything like that. I'm good. I'm good. But the major one, of course, because AEW on Max, it's a big deal. But WWE on Netflix, Raw on Netflix, is huge. People are... It was a mini WrestleMania vibe of how they were promoting it and how much they were pushing it. I mean, the presentation alone, when they started the show, it looked so good. And the card, while it was a light card, it was still a fun time. It was a fun time of watching Monday Night Raw. Even if it was almost a 3+ hour show, it was a fun time nonetheless. And I think, people have to appreciate where we're at. Wrestling is, in a way, and I've been saying this as long as I've been making content on pro wrestling since 2020, but mostly since 2021, I've been saying that wrestling is in a renaissance era. I know Cody's even mentioned that he's called this the Renaissance era. But just wrestling in a whole, I think when you can have AEW on Max, Raw on Netflix, and, you have so many fans nowadays, the product is bigger than it ever was. There's the wrestling tribalists that want to make it like, oh, this is AEW versus WWE. Like, fuck the other company. No. We want wrestling to grow. We want it to grow for, our fandom, for we to continue to support these things and get more out of it and get it to be, bigger than what it used to be like in the Attitude Era. On top of that, it's just better for the wrestlers themselves. The competition creates, amazing opportunities for them. But the fact that we have Raw on Netflix, it's just incredible. I enjoyed it. The presentation was great. The first episode had Seth Rollins versus CM Punk. I do think after rewatching that match, I'm like, you mean to tell me CM Punk won the match after kicking out of 2 pedigrees? Which one was on the announce table? 2 GTS, a stomp at one point or twice. This man kicked out of everything in the world. This was Super Cena times infinity. Seth Rollins losing was crazy to me. Seth Rollins has lost a lot of his big matches in the last couple of years since Cody has showed up. But hey, he was world champion for a bit, so you could say that. But no, I think that was a crazy outcome. But I hope CM Punk and Seth Rollins will continue in another match, maybe a Mania match. We'll see, even though the rumor is Roman versus CM Punk. So, yeah, pretty much Raw Netflix. It's cool. They're also doing a slow release here in the U.S., so they have moved Raw over to Netflix, but not all of Raw. There's only a few episodes of Raw on there collectively for the last couple of years. They have some other special stuff, which I think is cool. Like, they have little mini, like, episodes of, like, 7 minutes explaining who some of these, like, characters are, like who CM Punk is, who Cody Rhodes is. I'm like, this is really good for the new fans or the fans who used to be a pro wrestling fan that now are getting to discover it again because it's on a major platform like Netflix. So I think that's cool, but not everything's on there, and you also still need a Peacock subscription for at least another year because if you're in the US, you don't have it all. It's all still SmackDown pay-per-views. They're all still on Peacock, while internationally everything went to Netflix. So we'll see how it goes, but hey, Raw on Netflix, I'm excited about it. I'm recording today on a Monday, so we do have Monday Night Raw tonight. There's the rumor that Penta is going to be debuting tonight, so that'll be cool. The fact that Penta is no longer with AEW is a crazy fumble by Tony Khan. I think Tony Khan needs more help than he's allowing or what, because the fact that you had the Lucha Bros on there, one of the best tag teams in your company, and you lost Penta, Phoenix wants out, but you're letting him sit at home. Like, it's a messy crap. And right now, no offense to AEW, not everything that they're doing has me fully excited. You got me sold with Kenny Omega and anything Will Ospreay does. But right now, as a big Jon Moxley fan, I don't care about what the hell is going on there. You had me for the first couple of weeks after he murdered Bryan Danielson. But then you haven't really done much with it besides him just being like, we got to change AEW. But you're not doing much to change AEW. You keep the belt in a briefcase and you just fuck up people. Like, it's not doing much for me. So that's really what it is for wrestling in 2025. But hey, I'm excited. There's a lot to go over. And if I didn't already mention it I probably didn't fully mention it in the beginning of the episode because I was just trying to rant a little less. But hey, it's just me on here, so you're going to get a lot of rants. These episodes of Wrestle Cinema, obviously we circle around doing episodes on movies and with professional wrestlers in them. There's tons of movies that have professional wrestlers in them, and we're going to go over the good, the bad, and the ugly, but not every episode will be a review on a movie, just because it can get a little hard to always dedicate a week to watch a movie and then get back and review it, get a guest to review it with me. So not every episode will be like that. Sometimes you'll, for the most part, you'll get those episodes, but then you'll have the episodes where it's just wrestling conversations about, this past week or, a review on a pay-per-view or something like that. So that is something to expect in the future. We will be talking about wrestling in 2025 quite a lot on this channel, on this podcast, whatever you want to call it, just because I can't always talk about a movie or a show depending on how my time is. That's why I'm like, while I know what the center of this whole, shebang is, we will pivot here and there towards the other sides of it all. Like I said, it's called Wrestle Cinema. We'll talk about movies that sometimes aren't fully related to wrestling or with a wrestler in them, and we'll talk about wrestling even if there's not a movie a part of the episode. So just a little caveat there. So with that being said, we've talked about the wrestling in 2025, but now I want to talk about wrestling in 2024. So in the last year, I went to too many shows. Let's just put it like that. I went to as many shows as I could possibly go to. In 2024, I went to 18 shows. Some of them are combined, I will say. Like, for example, the last 2 shows I went to of the year, it was AEW Christmas, like in the Hammerstein. They did Christmas Collision, and they did AEW Dynamite on 34th Street. Then they also did a Rampage. They also did one, so I didn't even talk about the Rampage on this list. So technically it would be 19 shows, but I have them like categorized in like a subsection. Like, for example, AEW Grand Slam Dynamite, another one. That was a show. That was 2 shows on one night. So there's a few of those, but not too many. But I want to go down the list of every wrestling show I went to, just talk about what I really enjoyed, what I didn't love, what memories came from that. And we'll start off, actually. The first show I went to, that's on the wrong tab. The first show I went to was on my birthday. My birthday, Cinco de Mayo. We call it Cinco de Joseph. And my first show was House of Glory, Cinco de Mayo. It was supposed to be a lucha indie card where they were going to get a lot of luchadors involved, and it was pretty cool for what I experienced. There were some wrestlers I'd never seen before on the card. There were some wrestlers that I wish were on the card but didn't. The biggest match that they were selling, and I was so sad at this because I think this is 2 times or 3 times now he was advertised but couldn't show up because I'm assuming because of injury. The main event was supposed to be Penta versus Rey Fenix, brother versus brother, but Penta came out at some point during the show. He's like, hey, I know we got the main event. I'm super excited. It's Cinco de Mayo, but Rey is not cleared to be here. He is not able to wrestle. But we did have Penta versus Laredo Kid. Decent match. I enjoyed it. I think I would have loved, Penta versus Rey Fenix, but hey, you get what you get. Penta versus Laredo Kid was a pretty solid match for the most part. The first match of the night that I missed was Daniel Garcia and Isaiah Cassidy versus Aerostar and Dios de lo Infierno. I can't pronounce that. We got to the venue as that match was wrapping up, but then we had some other ones like Casey Navarro. He had a cruiserweight title match. I think Casey Navarro is a really cool guy who's been on the indies for a while. I know he's signed with TNA, which that's pretty freaking cool. He's a big He's a big Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona fan, and I know he even had a feud with him, which was really cool. We had, what else? Ultraviolet, who was a champion at the time, women's champion. She won against Sexy Star, but not the bad Sexy Star, if I remember, the good Sexy Star, because there's, that has changed around. Everyone knows, if you're a big fan of pro wrestling, about what happened to the old Sexy Star, who just try to ruin her career. I think she may or may not still be wrestling, but who knows? My favorite match of the night might have been Mike Santana, the HOG champ. He won against Psycho Clown. I've always heard about Psycho Clown, but never knew much about him until that show happened. I was like, I've never really seen him before. And then I see him, I'm like, yo, this guy's pretty awesome. So Psycho Clown, go check him out. If you ever seen a luchador clown mask with the tongue out, that's who it is. It's a pretty good one. And Mike Santana probably had one of the best 2024 for a professional wrestler out there. I mean, he won the HOG title that was at the end of 2023, actually. But, he defended it all over the place. He had an amazing time in TNA ever since leaving AEW. He's been doing so much better. And that's so sad to hear for a lot of, if you're a diehard AEW fan, there's so many wrestlers who have done better leaving nowadays. Oh, man. I'm someone that loves AEW, but it's true. So yeah, that was my first show of the year. It took me a minute before I went to a bigger show, and we'll get to that. My next show was a Create-A Pro. If you're familiar with Create-A Pro, and if you're a diehard wrestling fan, you probably know what it is, especially if you live in the New York area. Create-A Pro is the promotion that is ran by Brian Myers. Who else is in there? You got, I think, is it Bear Bronson? It's a wrestling school, and Brian Myers, aka Kurt Hawkins, is the creator of it all, and Create-A Pro has created some of the best wrestlers today. MJF, Chris Statlander, the best wrestler alive, Max Caster. I mean, the list goes on and on. But I was there specifically for one reason and one reason alone, for the one of the best matches on the card. The Shooter Boys, Aaron Ortiz, Anthony Vecchio, their first match ever. Anthony Vecchio is my girlfriend's cousin, so that was really cool to see someone that I've met, I don't know how to describe that, someone that I know, someone that I've seen, start their wrestling career and actually get into it and be really fucking good. It's incredible. They have the best way to compare them is like the world's greatest tag team, or what was it, American Alpha, Chad Gable and Jason Jordan. They got the whole like amateur wrestling background going on, and they're doing their thing, man. They are really out there traveling. They're not just wrestling for Creative Pro in Long Island, but they're going to Massachusetts. They're doing their thing, man. It's pretty cool to see, someone that has a close connection to me in that way, with being related to my my girlfriend. It's just incredible. So shout out to my boy Anthony Vecchio, the Shooter Boys. They are doing their thing out there. I think it's really cool. They have, at least on Cage Match, they have about 22 matches under their belt. And they are out here wrestling for Creative Pro, Chaotic Wrestling. What else do I see here? Wrestling Open. They are out here. Beyond. They are doing their thing. That is really cool to see. So check them out. I'm sure you'll get a little bit more familiar with the Shooter Boys as time goes on, and I'm sure they'll get some bigger opportunities out there. So that was my second show. Third show, I can't even really describe because I can't find it on Cage Match, and I don't even know what was the name, but it was a student showcase. It wasn't any, major stars. It was like some up-and-coming, wrestlers that have been training and trying to get the name for themselves out there. I personally can't remember exactly anyone that I saw wrestle. I remember being there, and I remember seeing the matches, but I don't remember any of their names. I don't know the name of the school or promotion. My buddy brought me out there. He was like, hey, there's a show in Brooklyn. You want to get drunk and watch this show? So we did, in fact, get pretty buzzed and went to this show, and it was a good time. But I can't for the life of me tell you who was on the card and who was out there. But it was pretty cool. I can say that much. So that was the third wrestling show I went to. The first major one that I have enough to talk about compared to what I just said. My fourth show of the year was AEW New Japan Forbidden Door 2024. I remember when hearing that Forbidden Door was coming to Long Island, New York, I was like, what? This is incredible. I've always wanted to experience Forbidden Door. There's always been some crazy stuff. My favorite Forbidden Door match is Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega. And you know what? Getting an AEW Forbidden Door in Long Island was a fun time. It could have been better, but it was a fun time. The reason why I could say it could have been better was two things. One, the rain really screwed us over. I am someone that enjoys, if I'm going to a big show and I have to travel pretty far to get there, if I get there early, I'm trying to drink a little bit, enjoy myself. I have a lot of friends that I can meet up with and enjoy my time with them, but the rain just really ruined it that day. We were not able to do any of it. We went inside to like the little bar area that they do have for the UBS before you go in and put your tickets in and whatnot, but that just wasn't the same. It was not the same. Also, I was very exhausted because I had a wedding that I went to the night before, and boy, I went too crazy, and it was a long day. Stomach wasn't feeling the best towards the end, but, by the time the show came around, I was good. I was ready to drink again and, be fine, but man, I was exhausted, and that plays a big role into how I felt about the show, unfortunately, because it just wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. I have learned that the older I'm getting, I love myself a good opportunity to see some, graps, good matches, 10 out of 10, give me a Dave Meltzer 5-star anytime, but in the mix of it all, especially the way with an AEW card, especially live, you can experience some of the best wrestling in the world, but you need some breaks, man, or you need some fun moments in between. And it was just for AEW, it was wrestling after wrestling after wrestling after wrestling after wrestling. Like, let me tell you, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 matches. To sit through 10 matches, and some of them are going like, 16, 17 like minutes, 20 minutes in a row. It is so hard to experience all of that sitting down for a good portion of it. If you're tired, you're screwed. But enough of my complaining. I mean, just the card itself. Like, I was excited to see Hechicero from from AAA. I'm like, this was awesome that there was some AAA influence in here. But he lost to MJF in a mediocre match. It was all right. We had the Elite, so it was cool to see Okada. That was my first time seeing Okada live. And we had, he was with Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks, and he went against Tanahashi and the Acclaimed. That was all right. That was nothing special. Really good match, though, Bryan Danielson versus Shingo Takagi. That was cool. This was as Bryan Danielson was trying to win the Owen Hart tournament, so that was cool. Another really, solid match was Toni Storm versus Mina Shirakawa. That was nice. We had Orange Cassidy versus Zack Sabre Jr., another solid match. We had this 6-man tag match. I think I just walked out. I don't think I watched any of this. I think there was at one point, or at least 2 different times, where I had to get up out of my seat and take laps around the arena because I was tired. I could not sit down for that long. And it was 100% during the Hook, Shibata, Samoa Joe match against the Learning Tree. I just couldn't do that. It was too much for me, and I don't care about the Learning Tree. One of my biggest hot takes about AEW is Hook needs to leave the company and go to NXT because I do not care about Hook ever since he, once he had his couple of weeks after his debut, I'm like, yeah, Hook's kind of cool. But then when I realized he's the same thing over and over and over again, and he has never once gained enough skills on the mic, I'm like, this is just not good, man. This is not fun. But a fun match afterwards was the AEW TNT title match that they had. That was fun. Jack Perry ended up winning it, which was wild. Takeshita had a crazy spot with Phantasmo going through a table off the ring apron. That was sick. By far one of the best matches of the night was the match after, Mercedes versus now WWE NXT's Stephanie Valkyra. I mean, the fact that like a month or 2 later she switched over, I'm like, wow, that was AEW could have had her, man. But WWE was calling and gave her a better shot. But Mercedes and her had an incredible match, and she won the New Japan Strong title off of her. Probably the worst match of the night by far, which I did not expect it, but it was Jon Moxley, the IWGP champion, which I'm like, that's just cool. Jon Moxley's the champ going against Naito. I'm like, this is incredible. On paper, I'm like, this match is going to be incredible. This match stunk. This match was garbage. This match was shit. And who am I to say this? But you know what? As someone that had to sit through that, I hated it. I'm sure Jon Moxley hated it too. I'm sure this is part of the reason why he's like, yeah, I got to go heel. I can't do this anymore. Naito and him had the horrible match. I think Naito did not want to do this match one bit. He probably did not like that Mox was champ. Who knows? But he was going over, so who cares? Match was shitty poo-poo caca. Like, it was bad, man. This was one of the worst things I'd seen in such a long time. But it was able to be forgettable towards the end. It was of the night because of the certified banger we had with Strickland versus Will Ospreay for the AEW World Title. That was one of the best matches I had ever seen. That match was just so good. I fell in love with how I've always loved seeing Swerve Strickland. I think this was my 3rd time seeing him live because he had done some AEW shows. But him going on against Will Ospreay, incredible. First time I ever seen Will live. This is a match that I need to rewatch. I need to do my 2025 rewatch of 2024 matches, and this was one of the best things I'd ever seen. Simply incredible. Okay, so by far the next match or next show I'm about to talk about is probably the best thing I had seen all year long. At that point, and might be one of my favorite shows of the year. It was called New Fear Cities: The Great American Trash. This was incredible. I keep using that word too much. I need another one. This was phenomenal. By far, it was a train wreck that meant the best thing in the world. If I mean, by me calling this a train wreck, I mean this was beautiful. This was a indie show. New Fear City does this show. They do many shows, in fact, and they are a deathmatch, no ring deathmatch promotion, which I could not understand. I couldn't fathom it. I was like, what do you mean they have no wrestling ring and they're a deathmatch promotion here in New York City? And I was out here. I got in, my friend and his boys were going to the show. It was on 4th of July. We had just gone to the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. I was just recovering over being sick too, and I was like out here and about. I should have not been out here, but I'm glad I did it. We went to this show and we saw some incredible stuff. They had dancers. They had these girls out here just dancing, nothing nude, but still crazy, going crazy with it. They had rock performances. They had 2 bands that were out there. One of them I still listen to this day. If I can find the name of it, I'll let you guys know. They were actually in my Spotify top 100 for the 2024 for my Wrapped. But they were just so good. The fucking wrestling was just out of this world in terms of how are you doing this to yourselves for what this is. 4th of July. Oh, yeah. The band was named Combat. There you go. Listen to the song Stay Golden if I could play it a little bit. They're like a, pop rock kind of, or punk rock kind of deal. I don't know why I said pop. I don't know if my mic picked that up, but I hope you heard it. Check it out. Stay Golden by Combat. They were pretty cool. I think they're based out of Maryland. Anywho, the matches. You had people like Matthew Justice and Tony Deppen from GCW fame out here. You had the main event, which was by far one of the craziest things I'd seen. Dominic De Niro, the no-ring deathmatch champ, going against Kobe Carino. Kobe Carino is incredible, by the way. I keep saying incredible. And Kobe Carino, son of Steve Carino. This guy should be signed somewhere. He is really, really good. Man is clearly following in his father's footsteps of just being an incredible wrestler. But, man, they had one of the craziest death matches I had ever seen live. The only other time I've experienced live death match wrestling was at GCW when I went to the Showboat. This was even crazier with the fact there was no ring. Kobe Carino's leg got slashed open. They had to tape him up, and Dominic De Niro had to improvise to make it give him his time so he could heal himself. Oh my god, that was insane. Another cool thing, we saw a food fight, no ring death match. It was the tag team was Meat on a Mission, Cheeseburger and Hot Dog Starks. I've known about Cheeseburger. Everyone's known about Cheeseburger from ROH, and I think he's been on AEW once or twice. Going against Luigi Primo, who is the guy who does the wrestling moves while rolling dough for a pizza, against Santana Chava, who's supposed to be a Mexican bull, nacho deal. I don't even understand it, but they were just throwing food at each other and wrestling. There was a suplex on a thing of nachos. There was a suplex with burgers and hot dogs getting thrown everywhere. It was a grand time. I think this was one of my favorite shows of the year. So much so, I kept going back to these shows with my friends. I found other shows that they were doing throughout Brooklyn, and I was like, boys, we gotta go. And I'll explain some of those in a bit. What a great time. My next show after that was HOG High Intensity. I think HOG is one of the best promotions out here in New York City just because there's so much going on. They get some of the best talent out there. HOG is run by Amazing Red and Brian XL, and they put on a bangers right now. When I look at this show card, I'm like, this might have been their best show of the year. They had Mike Santana go against Steve Macklin in a street fight. They had the main event with Swerve Strickland versus Amazing Red, and this match was like an easy 5-star match. Excuse me. They were going at it. We had Megan Bain out here, and she won the HOG Women's title. Zilla Fatu won the Crown Jewel title. Zilla Fatu won his first ever title, and Zilla Fatu, if you don't know by now, that's Umaga's son. So that was cool. Just a really good show. You had like the HOG staples of like the main event on there. They lost the belts to the Cold Blooded Killers of Charles Mason and Nola Quintano. Those two, like, if you're familiar with Charles Mason, he is a bastard. He is always out here. I'm pretty sure they run these belts Freebird style because there's a third guy in their group that they switch it around. Gringo Loco is out there. Gringo Loco, incredible indie star that you've probably seen with, he's out here typically with GCW. So, incredible stuff. I think they have some of the best wrestling in the Northeast. Monthly, they're always putting on a great show. I think they have on January 25th. I unfortunately won't be able to go there, but they got Zilla Fatu going against Rhino from ECW Rhino, that Rhino. They got Zilla Fatu going against him. They have Ricky Starks going against Mike Santana. I'm pretty sure they got a card, man. It's awesome. It's awesome, man. But either which way, if you're ever in New York City, go to an HOG show. I highly recommend it. Let's see. Let's go on I went to a Bloodsport. I went to a Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. That was really cool for the first time. If you're not familiar with it, it's like shoot wrestling MMA. I don't even know how to describe it. It's wrestling MMA. So there's no ropes. And they're making it look like that they're supposed to be hitting each other in a more sense than wrestling is. It's worked MMA, and you'll see some cool stuff like Homicide won against Mike Santana. Just another great time to see. Anytime I see Mike Santana on a card, I'm happy. He always delivers and deserves a bigger spotlight all the time. He is so good. So that was there. Mike Bailey was there. Masha Slamovich, one of my favorite indie stars right now, she was out there. Great show by Josh Barnett. MVP walked out, and that was so crazy because MVP was signed to WWE at the time, and this is before he ended up showing up in AEW. So just seeing that he was there was like, whoa, what the hell? That was just cool. So yeah, great show, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. That was the 7th show of the year I went to. The 8th show of the year in August was another New Fear City show. This was in a bar, which I thought was insane. Brought my friends there, and at least so. And the other New Fear City show I went to was a bigger space, a lot of room. There was an outside portion and an indoor portion for this one in August that I went to, and it was called New Fear City Let's Fucking Die. Great name. There was it was a bar, and then in the back there was like a area for like a band to play, and that's where we were at. And I forget that heavy metal is heavy metal, and especially in a tight, confined room, your ears are bleeding. And I had the dumb idea of like, yo, we gotta get in the front, we gotta be close. No protection whatsoever for our ears. My ears were ringing for a good 24 hours. I was like, did I screw up my hearing? Probably, but man, it was rough right at those couple of hours. Oof. But great show. Of course, there was dancers, there was music, there was crazy wrestling. I bumped into barbed wire for the first time, and I was like, yep, that's real barbed wire. No one's fucking around when they're like, yeah, that's barbed wire. Yeah, that was real. So that was really cool. What else do we have here that I could talk about? Oh, the next show I went to, another AEW show, AEW Grand Slam Dynamite and Collision. The best match there's two. Was there two? They were the two biggest highlights I could point out. Seeing Nigel McGuinness' first singles match in years going against Bryan Danielson, that was incredible. The fact that he's able to wrestle again you would have never thought this. Years ago, you're like, man, like Nigel McGuinness, one of the best wrestlers ever, one of my favorite people to listen to on the mic, on the commentary, because it just gives me these the 2013, 14 years of ROH. I'm like, man, that's one of the best wrestlers turned commentators, just to then be able to wrestle again. I thought, when All In happened in London and he came out, that was like groundbreaking. I was like, whoa. But then he had a match against Bryan Danielson, his biggest rival ever. That was nuts, man. I loved it so much. And then incredible match. What was probably the best match of the night? Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher versus the Young Bucks for the tag team titles. The Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher loss, but incredible match nonetheless. Collision was right after, and to be honest, I don't remember much of the Collision. Jamie Hayter had a match against Saraya in a Soraya's Rules match. That was actually pretty fun for what that was, so I actually do remember that. What else we had here? Adam Page and Jeff Jarrett had a lumberjack strap match. It was cool in theory, but it didn't live up to it, but it was good enough. I think towards the end of the match, it started really ramping up. The main event was Okada versus Sammy Guevara in a Continental title eliminator match. And the match, at this point in the show, it's like almost midnight now. I'm like, I'm leaving. I'm not doing this. I ended up Ubering home. It was like a $40 Uber I did not want to spend. But I had work the next day. I was tired. I'm like, come on now. I don't need to sit through 2 back-to-back 2-hour shows. Like, Tony Khan, horrible pacing when this man puts on a show. Like, I don't get what's up with this dude. But yeah, nonetheless, was that now my 3rd or 4th Grand Slam? I've been to every AEW Grand Slam since 2021. So 1, 2, 3, 4th Grand Slam. Probably like this third. The first Grand Slam is by far the best. I think every year they kind of go just a little bit below each other. And the biggest thing, I guess, to talk about it besides the match and also just the state of AEW has been going in the last couple of years is, the first AEW almost sold out. If not, it did sell out Arthur Ashe Stadium. The second one, there was less people, but still a good turnout. Third one, I'm like, all right, yeah, there's definitely less people in here. People I know were like, oh, send us a photo of the hard cam section, because, AEW's known for having an empty hard cam nowadays. But no, it was pretty filled for the most part, but not in the same level it was the first 2 years. And then this past year, they had really cut down on how much production they were doing. Like, there was no giant ramp that they always do. That's the fun part about, like, when I go to a Grand Slam, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. No big ass ramp. They pushed up a lot of things. Like, the ring was so much closer to the actual staging area and Titantron and all that. That was new. That was the first time I'd seen such a small, compact area for AEW, which I'm like, all right, maybe in the future you should start running smaller venues. And they eventually started doing that a bit more with, like, Collision. And we'll talk about it with AEW Christmas. But, man, like, if you're not going to be able to sell out these big venues anymore, just go to smaller ones. And I'm glad they're starting to do that a bit more. So there was that. Grand Slam. Another really good show that I went to, my 10th show, was HOG Believe in the Glory, and the reason why it's called Believe in the Glory is because they had Mr. Joe Hendry on the card. He went against Joey Janela in a decent match. It was just cool to see Joey Janela, Joe Hendry. I mean, Joe Hendry, 2024 was really his year. We'll see what happens with 2025. The Rumble's coming up soon. I know his stock isn't as high as it was, but hey, it's pretty cool to see that Joe Hendry was there. Saw Megan Bayne again, which was really cool. She went against Lana Cross. That was the first time I ever seen her. That was probably one of the best matches of the night. I'll put that there. Then we had Mike Santana go against Jay Lethal. I wasn't really expecting Jay Lethal to be there. It wasn't a bad match, but I was like, why is Jay Lethal here? What else? Amazing Red was in a 6-man scramble earlier tonight. That was cool. Gringo Loco was there. Zilla Fatu once again. Overall, a decent card. but really cool to see Joe Hendry. I even got a photo of him, so that was nice. And let's continue to go down my list. I went to so many shows. I went to another New Fear show. This one, they went against Rise Underground, which was another similar promotion, but in the UK. That was interesting. My friends had fun during that too. It was also during the Mets playoff run, so we were also looking at our phones for that. But no, nonetheless, anytime I always recommend anyone, if you've heard of New Fear City, just give it a try. It is one of those things where you could bring anyone that doesn't care about wrestling and they'll walk out and be like, what the hell did I just see? In a good way, in a shocked kind of manner, but man, incredible stuff. Then I went to another Creative Pro show, and this time it was called Creative Pro Showing Off, and it was because the Shooter Boys, they were tag teaming with Nick Nemeth. That was so cool. So Nick Nemeth, a.k.a. Dolph Ziggler, has been had a hell of a 2024 as well, starting it all at Hard to Kill at TNA. Ever since getting released from WWE, he's been all over the place. AAA, New Japan, TNA, Creative Pro, HOG. He's been on the indies. He's been doing his thing. So yeah, he was tag teaming with my girlfriend's cousin, Anthony Vecchio, and I had to show up because this is by far the biggest match of his career, his young career at this point. And he was full circle for him. This guy, he showed a photo on his Instagram. This kid showed a photo of him being a little fan of Dolph Ziggler back in the day. They went to a show, I think, at Nassau Coliseum, I think his father was telling me. And the main event was John Cena versus Dolph Ziggler. So, his brother, Anthony's brother had a John Cena sign. Anthony had a Dolph Ziggler sign. And they were just all super excited to see him. And being able to tag team with him in 2024, that was I couldn't miss that for the world, just because I'm supporting this kid, but then also seeing that he gets to have a big ass match like this. I was yeah, I'm gonna go. It was so cool to watch him tag team with someone that he idolized. That was cool. He even came out wearing their merch and all that. I bought the Shooter Boys merch. It was great. I thought this was one of my favorite moments of the year, just seeing that. So yeah, Creative Pro, highly check it out. Stay on the lookout for the Shooter Boys, Anthony Vecchio and Aaron Ortiz, who I just slapped my mic. 13th show of the year that I went to, Deadlock Pro Wrestling World's Strongest, and this was in Newark. Was it Newark? Jersey City. There you go. It was in Jersey City in the White Eagle Hall Arena. Brought my boy Nick out there, and we went to one of my favorite bars in Jersey City. It's called Lucky Sevens. The cheapest drinks, cheapest food you could find in the best way possible. Small little dive bar that you could just, it was walking distance from the venue. I got pretty sloshed that day, had a brunch in the beginning of the day, and then we did that. Had a great time. First time ever being able to see Deadlock Pro Wrestling as someone who's grown up being a fan of, James, Tony, and Johnny. Someone that even worked for Deadlock at a time when they were doing editorial pieces. One editorial of the year, just saying. So being able to see those boys was incredible. I was able to gift them these little things that I had. I went to Spirit Halloween, and they're big fans of Killer Clowns from Space, and I had these cups. I was like, here you go, boys. Gave them some koozies for Wrestle Cinema. Gave them little trading card things of their favorite female WWE wrestlers at the time. It was just so cool to not only just see the boys for the very first time, but the fact that they're putting on an incredible promotion like Deadlock. I mean, I got to see Jake Something go against Donovan Dijak. That match was crazy. Mike Bailey was in a 2 out of 3 falls match. That one was I saw Beast Mortos. They are doing God's work over there at Deadlock. One of my also favorite shows of the year. Also had great seats in the second row. And yeah, incredible stuff. I hope they run Jersey City again. I know they're going to be running New Jersey somewhere in New Jersey this Friday. We'll see if I make it there. But I, nonetheless, love the fact that Deadlock Pro Wrestling was able to run a show that I could actually go to for the first time. So check out Deadlock if you haven't. That was my 13th show. we're almost done here with all the shows I've been to. We could close it out. I feel like I don't have to go through every single one, but I had to because there's some good ones on here, like AEW Full Gear. That was a really fun show. I saw Bobby Lashley's first match in AEW against Swerve Strickland. That was cool. Moxley versus Orange Cassidy was a nice match for the main event. But you had like Daniel Garcia win the TNT title against Jack Perry. That was such a feel-good moment. You had Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay put on possibly my match of the year. Will Ospreay was in almost every one of my favorite matches of the year. Him against Takeshita, him against Swerve, him against Kyle Fletcher part 1 and part 2, him against Okada. But yeah, Kyle Fletcher, this was the match that really put him out there. Like, everyone had there was a mixed feeling of, like, is Kyle Fletcher as good as he says he is, or people want to say he is? What is Kyle Fletcher doing nowadays? But that was a really good match. They delivered. Jay White and Adam Page, another good match. Mercedes Moné and Chris Statlander, another good match. And I was with my boys Nick, I was with my boy David. Like, having friends with you at a show always makes it 10 times better. So we had a great crowd there. And going to Newark for a show, while it can be a pain in the ass to go to these places that aren't directly in the New York City area, going adjacent or having to go to New Jersey just for a show, hey, it was fun. My favorite thing, though, it was on a Saturday, because I hate when Tony Khan does a show on a Sunday and then the matches are going until midnight. But hey, this show ended at a decent time. So yeah, AEW Full Gear, another highlight of the year. Then my first and only WWE show of 2024, WWE Saturday Night Main Event in Long Island, New York, the first Saturday night main event in years, like 10, 12 plus years, if I remember. Just a great time, nonetheless, for WWE. WWE's been on a roll. 2024 was very, very strong year for them. So being able to go to Saturday Night Main Event, seeing Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes, seeing Chelsea Green win the Women's United States Championship, the first ever champion, the best champion. That was really cool. I think I really enjoyed the show. It could have been, they could have thrown a little bit more at us. They could have maybe gave us a Roman. They could have gave us a Jey Uso. That would have been cool. But for what they gave us, I enjoyed it. And Saturday Night Main Event, full circle for me, because that was technically my first ever show I went to. First wrestling show I went to was a Monday Night Raw, Saturday Night Main Event double taping. That was really cool to go for that. So I was happy to have this full circle moment. But the fact that it was Long Island, that sucks so bad. That really sucks so bad. I did not love the part of Long Island going to Nassau Coliseum. It is a pain in the ass to get to unless you're driving. I also went to SantaCon in the morning, and I was up super early, super tired, but made it through. Had a good time. Then went to the Ravens-Giants game the next day, and Ravens beat the Giants' ass. Let's go Ravens as they go on to the playoff against the Bills this weekend. All right, 3 more shows for you. Actually, wait, I didn't even go to this one. So no, I didn't go to this. I did not go to HOG Live for the Moment. I thought I was going to, but I did not. So the last 2 wrestling shows I went to, back-to-back days, AEW Christmas Collision and AEW Dynamite in 34th Street. The coolest thing about this, it was in the Hammerstein Ballroom. The Hammerstein Ballroom, notorious venue for wrestling fans. Everyone remembers it from the ECW days. And the fact that we got to go there for an AEW show, it was so good. Will Ospreay was out there having some great matches. Kyle Fletcher and Daniel Garcia had one of the best matches of the weekend. Will Ospreay, Brody King, Ricochet, Will Ospreay. Ricochet against, who did he go? Did he go against Claudio on the second night? Who did he face? He went against Darby Allin. There you go. Commander had a really good match with Claudio. Shelton Benjamin and Okada. Tony Storm's out here. This was a really good card. I enjoyed both nights. On the second night, we had an ROH kind of matches here and there, but they also filmed the last Rampage ever, and that was a little damper on the weekend. But nonetheless, fact that you could go to AEW in the Hammerstein Ballroom. I hope AEW takes ownership of the Hammerstein. I know GCW is going to be running their show this Sunday, and debating on I still go, but $60 tickets for a show that I'm not sure if I want to go to, we'll see. But either which way, Hammerstein is wrestling. Sure, it doesn't look exactly the way it was for ECW, but the fact that I was there for a show made it so much better. I was very happy to be at the Hammerstein. Second time I've ever been there because I went for the first GCW show. I wish I would have went to the OG ROH days, but I was just too young and too poor to go. So glad I was able to experience it, and I hope Tony Khan realizes, hey, if you can't sell out Arthur Ashe anymore, you don't need to be in there. Go to the Hammerstein. You had a great turnout. It looks so good out there. I really hope Tony Khan just continues to run it from here on out because WWE's not running it. There's a rumor that they might run NXT in there, which if they do, I'll be there. But I think Tony Khan should own Hammerstein. Make it for for WWE. I can't speak English anymore. Take it away and just own it. Make it your thing, Tony. Please and thank you. I would love if that's how it was there. AEW just continues to run it. More wrestling needs to be in the Hammerstein. That's all I got to say. Whew, that is all the shows I've been to. That was a lot of talking for me. But man, I had an incredible year. I don't think I'll go to that many shows this year. I'm at the point where I'm at wrestling fatigue. Live event wrestling fatigue. That's why we'll see if I go to Hammerstein for GCW this weekend. I might just watch it online. But nonetheless, that is all the shows I've been to. That is pretty much almost a show, but we're going to end it off with one last thing. So this day in wrestling history, there's some wrestling history that we need to talk about because there's some really good stuff out there. So on this day, January 13th, we got a couple of them. In 1972, Antonio Inoki, he founded New Japan Pro Wrestling. That is kind of crazy to think that so many years ago, almost 50, 54, 55? Yeah, I think. What's the math on that? Either which way, 1972, Antonio Inoki found New Japan Wrestling. And New Japan, while it's not the, claim to fame as it always has been, ever since losing AJ, Kenny, and all that, it's still one of the biggest, promotions and the biggest promotion in Japan. So to say that New Japan is still around after 53 years, that's the math. That is very cool to see. R.I.P. Antonio Inoki. And shout out to New Japan. They just had an incredible weekend last weekend with Wrestle Kingdom, with Wrestle Dynasty. If you haven't seen Kenny Omega versus Gabe Kidd, what are you doing? Go watch it. Okay, so on this day, once again, 2001, ECW held a house show at the Pine Bluff Convention Center in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And this would be the final event for ECW. As, they were going to file for bankruptcy. They filed for it in April 4th of that year. But yeah, the last show they would ever run was a house show on this day. Then, in 2004, WWE Originals was released. And if you don't know what that is the CD that they released where all these wrestlers had their own original tracks. John Cena has some stuff on there. I think you could listen to Basic Thugonomics on there. Booker T has a song. I think even Rey Mysterio has one. I highly recommend it. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Music. Go check out WWE Originals. And then with some closer history, in 2002, Peacemaker was released. I actually finally just watched Peacemaker fully for the first time last month in December. And I don't know why, as someone who's a diehard John Cena fan as I am, why'd I wait so long to finally watch Peacemaker? Incredible show. Highly recommend. If you love Cena, you'll love Peacemaker. That's all you have to do, man. Go check it out. And then, 1 year ago today, Nick Nemeth, a.k.a. Dolph Ziggler, debuted at TNA Hard to Kill. That was the first time to see him anywhere that wasn't WWE. After being released, it took him a couple of months, but he showed up in the new or renewed TNA, after, going by Impact for so long, and they had the identity crisis and all that. They're back to being TNA, and this was a great time just because we're like, whoa, now we get to finally see what Nick Nemeth is all about, and he did so much already. He's the TNA champion right now. He won the AAA title. He's been all over the world. He's really renewing his career. And he's with TNA. He just re-signed with TNA as well. And I'm excited for everything Dolph does. Dolph was one of my favorite guys for a long time. That's why when I got to see him with, my girlfriend's cousin, Anthony, I was like, man, this is so cool for him, for me to just see this man, Dolph, doing his thing outside of the Fed. Like, incredible stuff. I was just so happy to see him continue his career because he could have just faded away if he wanted to. He's made enough money with WWE. He doesn't have to wrestle again, I'd imagine. He'd be fine for years and years to come. But no, he's out here doing his thing. He signed with TNA at that time. And, this was at a time where, everyone's like, TNA's back, TNA's back. I think 2 weeks later, they let go of Scott D'Amore, and TNA has made some questionable decisions since then. So maybe not fully back, but hey, TNA's still around. They're still kicking, which they got, some great stuff on there, even though they're losing some people. Mike Bailey's no longer with the company, and he's one of my favorite wrestlers right now. But they still got some good ones there with Nick Nemeth, Joe Hendry, Jordan Grace for now, Masha Slamovich. They still have a solid roster for the most part. But hey, last year Nick Nemeth joined, and that was pretty cool. So that's your day in history. And that is pretty much your episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. I know it was a long one. I hope you enjoyed the new theme at the beginning. So I hope you like that. Next week, we will have our first movie review. And that is going to be on Chris Jericho's new movie coming to Shudder. It is called Dark Match. And it is a horror movie where apparently a wrestling show signs up to do a show in some random town. Turns out where they're hosting the show and the people who are sponsoring it or putting the show together with them is a satanic cult. And all these matches are like rituals and stuff. And Chris Jericho's in it. I'm actually seeing the movie tonight. I'm going to a live Q&A where Chris Jericho will be there. Hey guys, Chris Jericho will be there. And he will be answering questions and then showing a screening of the movie. So I'm going with my boy Finn. So next week we will be reviewing it. So look out for that episode come Monday of next week. And as always, follow us on Wrestle Cinema on all social media networks. Check us out on YouTube. Check me out on Twitter, the homie Joe Bro. Oh, man, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And hey, we're back. I hope for long. I hope we're here for a long time, a good time. Peace out, people. Catch you on the next one.